All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and install Passport, and we're also going to install the module for the Passport uh, strategy for Google OAuth 2. So let me go over to my console right over here, and let me zoom in a little bit, and I'll show you how we're gonna install this. So you're gonna go ahead and type npm I passport, and you're also gonna type passport OAuth passport Google OAuth. I think it's OAuth 20 if I remember correctly. Passport Google OAuth 20, and it actually just stands for 2.0. Yeah, this is the correct one. Perfect. So let's go ahead and install that. And again, if you're not using TypeScript, then you don't need to install the type files. But I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So do npm I -d, and then the types for passport, and then the types for passport Google OAuth 20. All right. All right, cool. So now that we've gotten that set up, the next thing that we'll need to do is, of course, set up Passport, which we did not do in the last episode, but we'll do that right now. And so what we'll do first, and the very first thing that we'll do, is inside our index.ts file, the main file over here. Let me close this. I'll go ahead and import Passport from Passport. And let me actually move this up top over here. Okay. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and initialize Passport right now. Now, we're not using sessions, at least not for this tutorial, we won't be. But if you know how to use sessions with Passport, definitely go ahead and do so. It's not really super complicated, and I also have some tutorials that actually cover how to use sessions with Passports. Definitely go ahead and check that out. The concept is still the same exact thing. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and right up over here, I will go ahead and do app.use passport.initialize. If you were to use sessions, you would just also add an extra app.use pass in passport.session. Because we're not using sessions, we're not going to add this line. Okay. Now that we've done this, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go inside auth.ts, and we're going to go ahead and import Passport into this file. And yeah, that should be fine. And what we're going to do is in between these two parameters, so as the middle parameter, so it's going to be the second parameter really. So for the first route /Google, we're going to pass in passport.authenticate, and we're going to pass in a string, and it's going to be the strategy name, which is just Google, because we're using Google. If you're using Facebook, you would pass in Facebook. If you're using Discord, you'd pass in Discord. And then same thing with Google redirect, the Google/redirect route. We'll do passport authenticate Google like this. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're making it so that when we actually visit the /Google route, we're basically invoking this passport.authenticate middleware, and this will actually take care of redirecting us to the Google login screen. And you'll see that in just a second. Let's just run our code real quick. And let me open up a tab. Okay, so let me just move this over here. And if I go ahead and do /API/auth/Google, right now you're going to see that it's giving us an error. It says unknown authentication strategy Google, and that's totally fine. The reason why this is happening is because we haven't actually set up the strategy itself. Okay, so we've only registered passport.authenticate for the route. Like, we've only invoked the middleware, but we haven't actually created the actual strategy itself. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll create a new folder called strategies, and you might have multiple strategies, so that's why I'm doing this. And it's a nice way to keep everything organized anyways. So we'll create a new file, and I'll call this google.ts. And what we'll do is we'll import passport, and we'll also import from the passport Google OAuth 20 package. I'll call it OAuth 20, but it's really OAuth 2.0. Okay. So we'll go ahead and import the strategy class, and I'll actually rename this as Google strategy. And that's just due to preference. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do passport.use, and then we're going to pass in a new instance of Google Strategy. Okay, and this is going to take in two parameters. The first parameter is going to be the strategy options, and the second parameter is going to be the verify function. And I'll make this asynchronous in case we need to perform some kind of asynchronous option. Okay, so we're going to need to pass in 4 properties. Now, this will differ based off of your integration, but the most basic level, we will need to pass in 4 properties at least. The first one's going to be the client ID. The second one's going to be the client secret. The third one's going to be the callback URL. And the fourth one is going to be the scope, which is going to be an array of scopes. And I'll explain a little bit more about this later. Okay, but first let's go ahead and actually grab the client ID, the client secret, and let's go ahead and actually configure our callback URL. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our project. So let's go over here. Okay, and we'll go over to the credentials page, and first let's just go ahead and copy the client ID and the client's secret. So let's do that. So I'll save that inside the .env file, and make sure that you do not stage this file. If you're using Git and if you plan on pushing this to GitHub, right? Do not, and even if it's like a private repository, it's good practice to not commit the env file or any file that contains secrets, because you never know, you might accidentally make the repository public, and someone with a scraper could easily just like steal all your secrets. So you steal like all your like Google secrets, right, or your client secrets. So you don't want to, you don't ever want to commit anything that has your client secrets. Okay. So let's go ahead and get the Google secret. And I'm actually going to rename this environment variable to Google client secret and rename this to Google client ID, just to be more precise. Now for the redirect URL, it's going to follow this URL path. So /Google/redirect. So the whole path will look like this. Localhost, the port, so port 3001, /API, because remember we have our router prefixed with /API/auth, and then /Google/redirect. So this is going to be the URL that Google will redirect the user to upon successful authentication. Okay, or unsuccessful too, because it could fail, and they will redirect it to this route. Okay, so before we do anything else, let's go ahead and copy this URL. Let's add this as the authorized redirect URI. Let's save, and we're done. And let's also save our env file, and we will need to actually restart everything, so that way the env file will correctly be loaded, because we did just make changes to the .env file, and we do need to manually restart it whenever that happens. Okay, so what we do now is we need to go ahead and reference our environment variables. So we'll do process.env.Google client ID. Remember, it has to match the same exact name, Google client ID. Now, if you're using TypeScript, it will give you this error where it's saying that basically it's saying that this Google client ID property is possibly undefined. If you're using JavaScript, you won't really have to worry about this as an issue. But I'm just going to go ahead and use the exclamation mark, because I know that this will definitely not be undefined as long as we load our environment variables correctly. So I'll assert that, and I'll do the same thing for Google client secret. And for callback URL, that will be Google callback URL. Did I call this callback URL or redirect URL? I called it redirect URL. Okay. All right, cool. So now that that's done, for the scopes, what I'll do for now is I'll set up the email scope and the profile scope. And again, and I'll show you how you can add other scopes later on, but the most basic ones are email and profile. Okay, so let's go ahead and just save this. And what we need to do now is we actually need to import this passport file inside the index.ts file. Now this is going to look a little bit weird, but this is just how it's always been done. What we're going to do is we're going to actually use a require statement instead. So I'm going to do require./strategies/Google. So this will import the strategy, but we're actually using require instead of import. Now I've tried actually just using import in the past, and it didn't seem to work. I think if you use a dynamic import, it will work, but I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. I encourage you to try using the dynamic import, but just for now, I'll leave it like this. And you want to make sure that you import this after the config function has been called, so that way the environment variables have been loaded, and they'll be used. They'll actually be able to be used. Because if you don't, it'll give you an error. Okay, so I'm gonna save. So now our passport strategy is actually loaded into memory. We're not just creating this. We actually have loaded into memory. So now if I go to that route again, so let's go to /API/auth/Google. You'll see that now you can see that I'm brought to the OAuth 2 screen, and of course I can select whichever account I want to use to authorize. So I select this. Now right now nothing's going to happen, and the reason why nothing's happening is because we haven't implemented anything. We haven't implemented the logic for our verify function. Okay, so in order for us to actually do something, right, we need to actually configure our verify function. Now, this verify function actually takes in 4 parameters. It takes in the access token, refresh token, profile, and the verify function, or verify callback. Now, the profile is actually going to be of type profile, and I'm going to import the one from OAuth, the Google OAuth 2 package, and not the passport package. Okay, because there's 2 different ones, and I want to make sure you get the right one. So, for example, if we look right over here, there's the one from Passport and there's the one from Google OAuth 20. Get the one from Google OAuth 20, or whatever strategy you are using. Okay, so let me go ahead and just for the sake of tutorial, I will log the access token. I'll log the profile, and it doesn't matter that you guys are seeing my access token because I'm going to deauthorize the app later on anyways, and it's just for tutorial purposes. But obviously make sure that you do not, leak access tokens. Don't give it to anyone, right? These are also, I think, short-lived. I don't remember the exact time of the access tokens live for, but you will need to. But they do expire at some point. And of course, if your platform is going to allow other users to authenticate, you definitely don't want to save their access token raw. Make sure you encrypt it. So let's go back and reauthorize. So let's go over here. Let's delete this. What's going on here? Okay. So it seems like the authentication happened automatically because I only have one Google account. Okay, but at least you can see that now the data is over here. You can see that this is my access token. This is the profile. Okay, and this is all being logged inside the verify function. Okay, right over here. You can see that I have my Google ID, I have the display name, I have the family name, I have the emails, right? The value of that. I have photos, I have the provider, which is Google, and then you have the raw JSON string, and then you have this JSON property that maps to this object, and it just gives you all the other stuff like the ID, which I think is the same thing as this one, name, given name, all that kind of stuff. So all the basic information, of course. And of course, you can use this basic information for your platform. So whatever type of application you're building, you can actually use this data to display to the user to let them know that this is what is being shown to them right now. Okay. And if you wanted to obviously complete the request, you can just call the done function. And I'm going to go ahead and pass in null and undefined because we don't have any users saved right now because that's not what we're building, right? And what's going to happen is that once you're done with the request, it'll actually say unauthorized, and that's because we haven't actually successfully passed in the user object. Okay, but if I actually were to change that, and if I did something like username, profile dot, display name, something like that, doesn't really matter. If I were to reauthorize again, it should not say unauthorized, I think. But yeah, you can see that now it's going to tell you that it requires session support. But don't worry about that though. Now, one thing with this issue with login sessions, the reason why this is giving us an issue is because we actually are not using sessions in our application. If you wanted to set up Express Session, all you'd have to do is just install the Express Session library, and then you'd have to initial passport with sessions. But the thing is, it depends on the type of application you're going to be building. Now, a lot of times you probably will end up needing to build some kind of authentication system that stores the user in the session. So you would highly want to consider doing that. But we're gonna go ahead and not do this just for the time being, just because I don't want to step away from the main purpose of this mini tutorial series, because I really want to focus only on making API requests with the access token. But what I will do in future videos is I'll show you how you can actually set up sessions with this project. If you do want to look at how sessions can be configured with OAuth 2, I actually have a tutorial series on Express.js on my channel that covers this. So what we'll do in the next episode is we'll actually dive into the YouTube API, the YouTube Data API, and I'll show you how you can perform operations such as subscribing to users, searching for videos, listing your subscriptions, and all types of things. So let's go ahead and end this video right over here, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.